How many of the issues that you're dealing with today are mostly mental and they're the ones in your head, not the external, I don't know what mic to buy, I don't know what mixer to buy, what camera do I use, any of that? Because we can always figure that out later. How many of the issues that you're dealing with are mindset related? Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode. It was episode number 54, 4 lessons I learned from a frustrated client. Today, for episode number 55, is your mindset holding you back? I was on a call the other day with a client, and yes, many of my clients think they're just getting a podcast coach or a business coach or whatever it may be when we start working together. But I have learned over the last 4 years, 3.5 years of coaching podcasters, that a lot of the issues that we're dealing with are not podcast issues or business issues or social media issues. They're mindset issues. And luckily, the other podcast that we have is 1,400 episodes of mindset and success and all sorts of stuff, right? A lot of self-improvement stuff. So I'm very excited for this episode. So I had a call with a client recently, and this client said, I really am struggling to promote my podcast. And I'm struggling to talk about my business, and I'm struggling to talk about the book I wrote, and I'm really struggling with a lot of this stuff. And we dug, and this person said, it's social media takes a lot of time, and I don't really like being on it. And we kept digging, and we kept digging, and we kept digging, and we kept digging. And eventually we got to the point where we got to a real deep part of the conversation. And this person said, you know what it is? I am afraid of judgment. I'm afraid of judgment. And I said, okay, let me ask you a question. Were you raised in a family or an environment that was heavily judging, and the judgment that you faced was usually based on things that you really cared about? You were told to be small, you were told to stay quiet, you were told if you talk too loud about what you care about, you're going to be arrogant. And this person said, yeah, that is spot on. And I said, okay, this isn't a podcast issue, this isn't a social media issue, this is a judgment issue. And I think a lot of us deal with that. The reason that we don't do something is drastically different than the reason we think we're not doing something. So we might say, I don't have time to do blank, when in reality, there's something holding us back from a mindset perspective. There's this really good book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. It's one of my favorite books on the planet. And it is all about the difference between having a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Fixed mindset basically means you believe things are the way they are forever. There's nothing you can do to change them, and who you are today is who you are going to be forever. A growth mindset suggests you understand that you're going to make mistakes, you're going to have quote-unquote failures, but you can get up tomorrow, you can get after it, and you can shape yourself into something completely different. I'm realizing now more than ever that somebody who has a fixed mindset, it's going to be very, very hard for them to win, because you're not going to get results in the beginning, most likely. And if you lock in the fact that I don't have results yet, therefore I can never get results, you most likely won't stick around long enough to actually get results. So after this conversation with this client, I really started thinking at a deeper level, okay, how many other blocks that I have dealt with, that clients have dealt with, that friends have dealt with, are actually mental blocks, are actually mindset things. It's actually their mindset that's holding them back. And in a way, you can probably connect this to almost anything, right? The reason, maybe this has been a unique perspective for me to gather. Many people who listen to this show aren't podcasters yet, but they want to be. So maybe one of the reasons you are not starting your podcast is because you've convinced yourself you're shy. Because you've always been told you were shy, you've always been told you're very quiet, and now you have adopted that as your identity. Okay. It's not that you don't know how to start the podcast necessarily. It's not that you couldn't reach out and ask somebody or YouTube it or ask me, whatever it may be. It might be that there's some sort of mindset thing holding you back. Maybe you have been convinced that if you're successful, that's bad. Making money is bad. That having your face on social media is bad. Maybe you have the belief that who would ever listen to me in the first place? That's a confidence issue, but a confidence issue is usually a mindset issue. nobody's going to listen to you if you don't put the product out. And maybe you aren't capable of teaching a bunch of people yet. Maybe what you have to say isn't valuable to everyone yet, but it doesn't mean it can't be eventually. How many of the issues that you're dealing with today are mostly mental and they're the ones in your head, not the external, I don't know what mic to buy, I don't know what mixer to buy, what camera do I use, any of that? Because we can always figure that out later. How many of the issues that you're dealing with are mindset related? I would challenge you to ask yourself that question. Because one of the reasons people don't do video is because they're afraid of judgment or they're afraid of their appearance or whatever it may be. I understand. I've been through that. But a lot of that has to do with mindset. And a lot of that will never change unless you start the process of changing it. So maybe you start showing up on your story a little more on Instagram or Facebook. Maybe you then start posting pictures of yourself a little bit more, right? And then eventually you start doing video. That's a process of mindset development. If you are the type of person that thinks failure means making a mistake and you cannot recover from that, that's a mindset thing. And that's something you can work on. It's going to be very hard to succeed if you immediately stop anytime you see resistance. And I can think about this. I had a client a while ago. This was probably 2 years ago. I had this client. And this client would always get messages from her friends. And I'm putting that in quotes for those listening because I don't know how friendly these people actually were. And other people in her industry. And she was always so afraid of everything that they said. They would say, oh, why did you name your episode this? Oh, why did you do this? Why did you do this? Why did you interview this person? And that got in her mind because she wasn't confident in what she was doing. She was more confident in what everybody else was doing rather than herself. To the point where many, many, many times I had to convince her not to quit her podcast. Not because I needed her as a client or I wanted to make sure she kept paying us, because she had a valuable podcast that was actually quite successful. And it's no longer running right now. And I do believe, unfortunately, that will probably be a regret in the future. But a lot of that was the mindset issue. Another thought, I had a client who got, I don't know, this client launched, when we launched her show, she ended up number 4 on one of the charts in the US. And in 5 or 6 episodes has probably 30,000 downloads or something. All right. It was a really successful show. And this person said, I'm not seeing any results from this yet. I don't know if I want to continue. And I remember telling them, it's so early. Of course you're going to see results. It's just so early. I don't expect you to see results anyway. I mean, the results you have 30, 40, 50,000 downloads. That's really good. Those are amazing results. Now, I know the results you're seeing aren't necessarily dollar signs yet, but I guarantee they will be eventually. If that's what we're optimizing for, that's a mindset issue. That's a short-term, it has to happen now, not a long-term, I understand it will happen eventually. It's very hard to win with that mindset.
Next Level University and Kevin is exactly where you need to be if you're a podcaster. When I first started out just a few months ago, I had no clue on the direction I was going. I was getting hustled by another company that was giving me not even close to the value that Kevin and Next Level U was giving me. They literally changed the trajectory of my podcast, have helped me out tremendously. They understand the clients. I promise you, you will not go wrong with dealing with Kevin and Next Level U. I'll see you there.
Imagine you go and plant 50 seeds today and you go check 50 seeds tomorrow and none of them have blossomed yet. And you say, oh, this doesn't work. I'm leaving. I'm not going to do this anymore. Well, eventually those seeds will pop up if you water them properly, but not if you don't believe they will. That's a mindset issue. So I'm realizing now more than ever, and it makes sense because this was my issue in the beginning too, that a lot of us are struggling more with mindset issues than anything else. They get masked as other things. I don't have time. I don't know how to do it. That type of stuff. Of course, we all make baseline surface level excuses, 100%, myself included. Oh, I'm just tired, blah, 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 whatever it is. But the truth of it usually is something much, much, much deeper. And if we can dig in and find out what's actually holding us back, then we can actually uncover that and become successful, whatever that means to us. We can take the next step. We can post on social media, interview that person, whatever it is. There are so many people out there who have really good ideas, and really good stories. And they're really intentional about spreading positivity, but they don't have the mindset yet that will allow them to embark on this journey. And I hope maybe something I said in this episode will break something loose, but this is why it's so important just to start with the minimum viable product. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the perfect mic. You don't have to have any of that. But when you start, you'll get momentum, and maybe you'll believe in yourself a little more, and maybe you'll do something that helps you say, okay, on the last episode, I mispronounced somebody's name. Let me make sure I don't do that again. It's not the end of the world. Was it super embarrassing? I'm sure it was. I've been there many times, and it sucked. But there's only two ways to guarantee, well, I wouldn't even say that. I was going to say there's only two ways to guarantee you don't pronounce somebody's name wrong. One, never do it again. Or two, make sure you study their name. But even when you study their name, sometimes you're going to get nervous. So the only way to really guarantee that you never make mistakes is to never try. The one way to guarantee you keep going is you say, well, I made the mistake, but I'm going to continue with the momentum I have. And I just think that's a really good mindset to have. We're on a long journey, right? This podcast is only 50 some odd episodes in. That's not that long. I got a long ways to go. If I'm going to do this every week for the next 10 years, 20 years, that's a long, long, long time. I have to have the mindset that I don't expect many results right now. My expectations are that I'll get some listens, and hopefully I'll add some value, and maybe somebody will book a call, and I'll be able to add value to them there. And when I have a Facebook group, maybe people will join. I hope they will, but I don't expect to have 1 million downloads tomorrow. My mindset is that this is a long game, and it is, right? Again, we just recorded our 1400th episode over at Next Level U. That's a long game. We've been doing it for 6 years. So that's another important understanding for us to have is a lot of the stuff we're doing right now is not going to pay off for a while. One social media post probably isn't going to do it. People go viral, but it's usually not the people we know because it's just like winning the lottery. A lot of people win the lottery. I just don't know who they are. I don't know if I've probably met one person who's won the lottery in my entire life, but at least a meaningful amount of money. So that's really my thought process for this episode. I know this isn't a self-improvement podcast. I know this is a podcast about podcasts, but obviously I am super into and super set on mindset and self-improvement and getting a little bit better every day. Because at the end of the day, I truly believe the level of your product, your podcast, is going to be directly connected to the level of self-improvement you have. I mean, if you're trying to turn this into a business, you're going to have to learn way more than just speaking. You'll have to learn business and sales and all that. And understanding that is only going to help your mindset. So there's a million stories about clients I've worked with who have really struggled with the mindset. And once we get the mindset set right, things start to go, right? It's usually not a lack of tactics. It's usually a lack of understanding oneself that holds people back. So that's really my goal in this episode, is to bring that to light. And maybe you'll ask yourself a different question after listening to this episode. Maybe you'll ask, is this excuse real, or is this a mindset issue? Am I afraid of judgment? Am I afraid of success? Am I letting the fear of failure stop me from even trying? Am I letting short-term discomfort stop me from long-term fulfillment? Are my expectations of what's actually going to happen here in the next month off? Those are all things that we can fix if we work on ourselves. I know it's not sexy. I know sometimes it sucks, but there's a lot of people out there right now telling you that you can grow and make millions of dollars and your podcast is going to be on the top of the charts and you don't even have to do anything. It's not real. It's not real. It doesn't work that way. And I don't want you to get pulled into that and assume that you're doing something wrong, when in reality, the vast majority of us take time. You do it for a year and you get 1,000 downloads. Then you do it for another year and you get 25,000, and then 40, and then 80, or whatever it may be. That's kind of how it goes. And even that's accelerated. Even that is accelerated because that depends on the amount of effort you want to put in. So at the end of the day, the goal of this episode, ask yourself, is my mindset holding me back? And what are 3 things I could do to strengthen my mindset? If you need book recommendations, reach out. Next Level U, you can always listen to that. We talk a lot about mindset and stuff there too. If this is an issue, I think that it would really, really serve you to work on it. I know some very, very confident people who have literally already given me money who haven't started podcasts yet because of mindset stuff. There's many of them. I mean, I can think of 5 people right now who gave me at least $500 each, and they still haven't started their show. And again, that's okay. Seasons and reasons, I completely understand. But I can think of a couple of those people that it's mindset related. One person won't even get back to me. They won't even get back to me. And if you're listening to this, it's not you, because if you're listening to this podcast, I promise it's not you. But there's somebody who gave me $1,000 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, and they still are avoiding me. The reason they're avoiding me is because there's something in their mindset that's holding them back. I didn't know that in the beginning. I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought they were mad at me, and they reached out and said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. This is a me issue, not a you issue." And then they ghosted me again. So obviously they're still working on that me issue. Nothing wrong with that. I'm working on my own me issues. We're always going to be working on those. So that is the jam for today. As always, if you are interested in a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session, I had a wonderful community member book a call last week. Amazing. It was an amazing opportunity to get to meet her. We talked about her business and making sure she's on the podcast platforms and maybe renaming, new artwork, all that stuff. So it was a very productive first call. I'm very grateful for you. You know who you are if you're listening, that this person reached out. So if you are curious, if you want to get to know me a little bit more behind the scenes and just jam on podcasting, click the link in the show notes below. Next week, we are going to be talking about intro, outro, and trailer mistakes. So one of the questions I get most often by new clients is, what is this intro and outro thing? And most people don't even know about the trailer, so a lot of people don't ask about that. But intro and outro, most people know kind of what it should be, but there's a lot of misconceptions around that. And then the trailer episode is also something I see very often. So we will jam on that next week. As always, I appreciate you all very much. I love you all very much. Keep on podcasting. Keep on crushing it. And I will talk to you next week.